right here at Robinson's Place, Dumaguete for this particular episode of iGreyhound being streamed live on the Facebook page of Foundation University and to be watched on Channel 6 of Phil Products TV Dumaguete. iGreyhound, as many of you all know, is the official television talk show of Foundation University. And today, we are truly privileged to have with us a guest as we celebrate the 15th Digital Expo of Foundation University. May I take time to introduce him to all our viewers as well as to the live audience present here today. I am actually a proud mentor of this gentleman. He is a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Information Technology, cum laude from Silliman University, Dumaguete City. He was also a BPI, that's the Bank of the Philippine Islands, Department of Science and Technology, or BPI DOST Science Awardee, and was a finalist in the Search for the Outstanding Students of the Philippines. After graduation, he went on to take postgraduate diploma in digital business in 2021 as an MIT Executive Education at the Columbia Business School as an emeritus scholar. He is into graphic recording and he is also into an advanced management course which he took in 2014 at the China-Europe International Business School. He has received several merit awards, and this afternoon he's going to expound on a very interesting topic, very challenging, in fact, if I may call it as such, and an innovation, but it is the way to go today, and this is on visual storytelling in the digital age. So friends, and to all our televiewers and to our live audience, it is my pleasant task to introduce a former student of mine, Mr. Ernest Dale Acar. Hi, Ernest.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am, for the very kind introduction. I have been, it's been a pleasure to be mentored by one of the best speech teachers in Silliman and now a part of the Foundation University family, right? Thank you so much. Sure. So, good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to have a few minutes to share the stage on why we are all storytellers, right? I'm also grateful for the opportunity to be part of this forum, of this Digital Expo, of course, with Sir Dean Cinco, our beloved president of the Foundation University, and of course, to the invitation of Ma'am Sandra Palomar Kwan. Thank you so much. So, I will not delay this further, but you know, we are all storytellers, right? We grew up listening to stories. In fact, it's not just a way for us to learn things, but it's also a way for us to tell things. And the best way that we learn is actually through visual storytelling, not just any other form of storytelling, but visual storytelling. And on my next slide, I'll kind of describe the journey of why I'm very passionate about visual storytelling, not just in my professional work, in my passion work, which I will talk more about later, but also in my life. There are 3 points really on why visual storytelling works. The first one being the ability to simplify complex ideas and make it more chewable for your audience. It's not necessarily dumbing it down because that's just pure simplicity. It's what I would call simplexity. You simplify big, complex ideas and making sure that your audience really understands what you're trying to say. The second is that the ability to capture big themes and big ideas are intrinsically human. We don't like the details, even if we are required to learn the details. But what is retained would really be the big themes and the big ideas. And lastly is the ability, of course, to capture and connect with your audience. So how do you make memorable connection if it's not as visually engaging when you are talking to or communicating to your set of audiences? My life has always been, in the next slide, it's kind of like a storytelling journey for me. My work entails a lot of strategy frameworks, discussions, meetings in the corporate context. And all throughout that journey, I've realized that, I have actually been storytelling, trying to simplify big chunks of data and present it to the audience, the board, the leadership team. And a recent passion is sketch note-taking or visual note-taking, which I try to weave into my current consulting engagements. This is what business strategy looks like in a slide, right? And most of my day job is really revolving around trying to develop frameworks, making sure that it's visually engaging. It's not those boring Excel sheets and databases, but how do you make sure that those big chunks are, again, understood by your audience? And oftentimes when you're talking to a leadership team, they don't have the bandwidth or the time to go deep and discuss in detail. And in most cases, they would expect you to give them the elevator pitch or the executive summary. And what better way to create executive summaries than making sure that your slides are delicious enough for them to partake in? So this is my day job, boring PowerPoint death. But I needed to have a creative output, and so I ventured into visual note-taking. So, as I mentioned, my day job entailed corporate work most of my life and now business consulting. And where did I really understand or learn about visual notes? So in 2011, I was in Vietnam attending a conference, and I saw a very quirky lady trying to draw the big ideas and the output of the sessions live. And that really kind of excited me. Wow, how can someone creatively produce an output of what is being discussed in a forum or in a meeting? And in 2018, while I was on a plane and I was skimming through my notes have been always full of doodles, if you call it that. And he asked me if I do actually a graphic recording gig, if I do those gigs. And so in 2019, that became my first gig. In Kuala Lumpur, I was invited to capture a training in visual notes with almost zero experience or zero background. And I was so happy because it's like an extended honeymoon for my life partner then, who kind of graphicked with me at that time. But later I found out that there are actually certification courses for it. So I took it on because we were so bored during pandemic. All my clients on the graphic recording side canceled anyway because you can't do face-to-face. So I just took a certification on it. And then I'm now trying to weave visual notes into my work. Now, I've been talking about visual notes. What do they really mean? So this is what I do. What we intend here is to capture ideas and expressions so that you create clarity, focus on big themes, making sure that it's humanly engaging and creative, but you do it, and this is the clincher, in real time. So as your speaker finishes, you should be able to finish or winding down your notes. I'll do a bit of a demo after this short presentation. So that's what I do, normally doing it behind the scenes at the back of a conference hall and trying to capture and sketch note everything. Now, how do you do this in real time? It's actually visual storytelling, just as a background, is really about engaging the whole brain, making sure that the images you create are actually retainable or memorable enough. And iconography is the best way to do that. But also trying to make sure that your visual anchors, when you create the visual note, is powerful enough so that it becomes a mnemonic for your audience to remember. There is this concept called dual coding theory, wherein we actually process better when words are married or intertwined with visuals or images. So instead of just saying ball, you actually draw a ball. In fact, that's how we learned our alphabets, right? That's how we learned early on in life. There's always a visual device that goes with the words. So whether it's true or not, it seems like it is, because in a lot of the things that we do, we try to look for visual cues. And we remember, even in branding, we remember brands who have very memorable mnemonic devices. So, complex ideas are better drawn because we want to do it in real time if it's simple enough, you know? So if you're talking about the pyramids, you can just draw 3-4 triangles and say this is the pyramids. Or when you draw a circle with a sun and, you know, circles around it to represent the planets, it becomes the solar system. I probably have to doodle a bit of the mountain ranges, and you can call it Cuernos de Negros, and some trees that looks like the Baguio pine trees. Now, this is where it becomes exciting, because oftentimes when we are asked to draw, we think of the drawing on my right? This particular dog, very finely detailed. But in graphic recording or in visual notes, it's the representation, not the detail, that is very important. Because whether you draw like this, which takes a lot of time, or draw a quick sketch like this, they're both dogs anyway. If I say it is a dog, then it is a dog. So, oftentimes, a lot of the graphic recorders start with just plain stick figures. And it's easier for them to actually adapt to visual note-taking because they don't have any expectation na, kinahanglan syada ang drawing or kinahanglan beautiful gyud. So, it kind of makes them progress fast in note-taking rather than, you know, focus on the actual, tama ba ang proportions of the dog that I'm making? A dog is a dog is a dog. The primary ingredient is actually active listening, and there's 3 points to this. First is, what are the key ideas or key themes that you want to learn or understand more of, or the ideas that you want to convey to the audience. The ability to cache and process themes. So it's very fast. Sometimes, if the speaker has a different accent than yours, then it's all the more difficult to capture the notes, right? So you should have, you know, if it's physical boards, we do have post-its to say, okay, later I will draw this particular idea. And then defining the flow is very important. And this is, you know, very crucial when you develop your notes. Normally, there are 2 types of speakers. A speaker who's very organized, who would already say at the start, today I will discuss 5 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they will go deep. That's the easiest to capture a note because you already know that, okay, he will have 5 points, and therefore I will divide my canvas into 5 and probably a 6th so that it will be his closing remarks, right? But there are speakers like Malcolm Gladwell who can really go round and round and then bring in another example over another example before he brings in another important point. And you need to be able to capture the big themes, but how do you do that? And that's why there are different canvas structures when you make notes. One is the linear one. You know, that's how we are taught to capture notes, right? Linear, and then you just put visuals around it. The second one is radial. There's a big theme, and then probably it's like mind mapping. There are other ideas that gets, you know, thrown at you, and then okay, I'll just create another section here. And the more organized speakers are more into the skyscraper and modular types of canvases. But Malcolm Gladwell and even Saint Peter from the Bible, I like doing popcorn for their ideas because it's just popping everywhere. So where do I get ideas and what made me learn more about visual notes? There are a lot of books available, and Google is there because this is a digital expo. Ebooks, uh, like visual collaboration and sketch note handbook is a very helpful tool for me. But I also go for the visual MBA book so that when I talk to like clients who are in the business field, it would be easier for me to develop the concepts, especially if it's financial discussions, right? And then Art Matters and Understanding Numbers are also inspirational when it comes to simplifying complex ideas. So what's in store? If you're interested in this type of note-taking, you can do graphic recording, which is purely capturing notes from listening to speakers or doing it for seminars and trainings. You can do graphic facilitation, wherein you talk at the same time you draw. And this is a bit more advanced because this is where they're expecting you to describe what the ideas are or what the themes are in meetings or strategy discussions, for example. And of course, illustration or translating that into infographic. So some of the work that we've done, this is a learning week in Mumbai where they made a gallery of learning points all over the seminar hall. There's also a workshop where people add on to the drawings that you make so that it becomes like a live document or a live coverage of the discussions. You can also do more infographic type of magazines or illustrations. And we did this all the more during pandemic. So what happened during pandemic was, in the next slide, what used to be a very physically founded or oriented type of graphic recording, wherein you bring big boards and big canvases in the seminars, it has been relegated to digital, where you do it on your iPad and it's flashed on a screen somewhere. So this is a work that I've done in 2021. I was in Manila at 2:30 a.m. and I was doing a graphic recording work for a meeting in UK. And what they've done is that they're flashing it here on screen. It's not so clear. Though the ongoing graphic recording, that's actually being done on my iPad. And that's during the COP26 for UN. So that's very common. These are the clientele or partners that I've worked with. And it's spanning across corporate, MNCs, educational systems or schools. There's also a lot of corporate social responsibility output and foundations, and working closely with UN. So that's what's in store. So probably you'll ask, bisan sa Q&A na lang later, does this earn well? And we'll discuss that later. So what I'll do is I'll make a short demo. This is a 10-minute video of one of my favorite speeches by Steve Jobs. I don't know if you've heard this, but Steve Jobs is very structured. And I think Apple is structured, right? Structured and creative at the same time. So the way he makes speeches is that he will already tell at the start that this is the structure of what I'll do. So I'll try to do that live.
Today, I want to tell you 3 stories from my life. That's it. No big deal. Just 3 stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really quit. So why'd I drop out? It started before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unwed graduate student, and she decided to put me up for adoption. She felt very strongly that I should be adopted by college graduates, so everything was all set for me to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. Except that when I popped out, they decided at the last minute that they really wanted a girl. So my parents, who were on a waiting list, got a call in the middle of the night asking, "We've got an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him?" They said, "Of course." My biological mother found out later that my mother had never graduated from college and that my father had never graduated from high school. She refused to sign the final adoption papers. She only relented a few months later when my parents promised that I would go to college. This was the start in my life. And 17 years later, I did go to college. But I naively chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford. And all of my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was, spending all the money my parents had saved their entire life. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting. It wasn't all romantic. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with. And I would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you one example. Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me. And we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on that calligraphy class, and personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference. My second story is about love and loss. I was lucky. I found what I loved to do early in life. Woz and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard, and in 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. We just released our finest creation, the Macintosh, a year earlier, and I just turned 30. And then I got fired. How can you get fired from a company you started? Well, as Apple grew, we hired someone who I thought was very talented to run the company with me. And for the first year or so, things went well. But then our visions of the future began to diverge, and eventually we had a falling out. When we did, our board of directors sided with him. And so at 30, I was out, and very publicly out. What had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone, and it was devastating. I really didn't know what to do for a few months. I felt that I had let the previous generation of entrepreneurs down, that I had dropped the baton as it was being passed to me. I met with David Packard and Bob Noyce and tried to apologize for screwing up so badly. I was a very public failure, and I even thought about running away from the valley. But something slowly began to dawn on me. I still loved what I did. The turn of events at Apple had not changed that one bit. I'd been rejected, but I was still in love. And so I decided to start over. I didn't see it then, but it turned out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. During the next 5 years, I started a company named Next, another company named Pixar, and fell in love with an amazing woman who would become my wife. Pixar went on to create the world's first computer animated feature film, Toy Story, and is now the most successful animation studio in the world. In a remarkable turn of events, Apple bought Next, and I returned to Apple, and the technology we developed at Next is at the heart of Apple's current renaissance. And Lorene and I have a wonderful family together. I'm pretty sure none of this would have happened if I hadn't been fired from Apple. It was awful tasting medicine, but I guess the patient needed it. Sometimes life's going to hit you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going was that I loved what I did. You've got to find what you love, and that is as true for work as it is for your lovers. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking and don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. And like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on. So keep looking, don't settle. My third story is about death. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." It made an impression on me, and since then, for the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It's life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you. But someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry to be so dramatic, but it's quite true. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Okay, so that was a fast sketch. So normally in real life, the speakers are much slower, and that gives you breathing space to correct. And the beautiful thing with doing it on digital scribing is that you have an ability to correct it, and then you go back and reflect on the notes that you've cached, and then you can edit it. So this is a fast sketch. And normally after the workshop, you do have a day to reprocess, fix all the spelling, the wrong imagery. Yeah. So that's a fast sketch that we normally do. Again, this is doing it in real time. And what's important is that you're capturing the big themes and the big ideas rather than making it beautiful. You can do the beautification after. So when we do submit it, we do reprocessing. You can create, like for example, if there are fonts that they want to use, you can create those fonts and store it in your iPad. And you can even store the different brush strokes that we looks fugly, but that's how it is. So that's 3 stories for you from Steve Jobs. In closing, I have a next slide. There are 3 things that I would want to create as a community here in Dumaguete. Coming soon, I'll announce it on my social. We'll do have some apprenticeship programs because there are a lot of clients that I've said no to because I just don't have the time. So why not train people to do it? And, have local talent who are much better at illustrating than me. Learn a thing or two on frameworks, on the different flows, and different concepts of fast notes and sketch note taking. So there's that, and then hopefully we can create a community of graphickers, as my teacher would call it, or graphic recorders or sketch note takers. And then let's have a community jam, note jamming together. Thank you.
Wow, amazing, really amazing. Oh my, our guest is now also being the crew. Okay, thank you very much. Wow, may I ask the first question that you actually asked yourself earlier? Does this make someone a millionaire overnight, Ernest? Graphic storytelling or being a graphic recorder?
If they pay you in dong, you can be a millionaire. Or if no, so the average rate abroad for graphic recorders who would do it live is lucrative. You can get paid from 75,000 per day to 150,000 per day. So before pandemic. But if your client is abroad, now they do digital scribing and they ask you to charge per hour. So per hour can be from 5,000 to 10,000 per hour. That's abroad. But for Philippine clients, the standard is for a day, 15,000. For a day's work, which is like 8 hours of graphic recording live. And then the per hour in Philippines is 1,500 to 3,000, which is still not bad.
Yeah, not bad, of course, no? If you make it as your career. But is there any other way by which we can do scribing even without going live, so to speak, like what you did just now?
Yeah, so there's 2 ways to do it. The first one is that you're given the documents or the notes from their meetings, and then they will ask you, can you visualize our discussions? Here's the minutes, visualize it.
Yes.
Yeah, so that normally a lot of policy making organizations like the UN would ask you to do that. They will send you their dockets and then they will request you to visualize the output. So it's more of like an infographic output. but in in a sketch mode.
Does it take more time if you do it like looking at the notes themselves rather than doing it live?
So there are, from a personal experience, I like doing it live because when the meeting is done, I'm done. So for me, it's just that I get to move on to the next. But a lot of other digital note takers, they want to relish and really reflect on the notes. I think that's their creative process as well, and so they will get the notes. They thrive more on here are the minutes, and then we will do it. Yeah.
I'm trying to visualize what you're also doing while you're speaking, no, Ernest. And I think it's quite interesting. The storytelling, of course, that I think many of us here have been exposed to is the mere storytelling, like what we're doing now, no? I tell an anecdote, for example. Maybe I can use visuals. Maybe I can use slides, for example. But nothing of this sort that you are doing. So in other words, does this make it not only more lucrative, but perhaps more enticing, more attractive?
Yeah. For organizations who tend to have long discussions, long winding discussions, this becomes more of a necessity because it captures the big themes that they want to drill on. But to answer your question, it's actually a new way of processing, right? Creative minutes is relatively new in the Philippines, but in Europe, it's like an expectation. So, like a lot of my clients who are based there, they would already know what to brief you when they say graphic recording. I need this. These are the key points. They already download it to you in a manner that, okay, they get what you are doing. Unfortunately, here in the country, it's more of like an add-on rather than a necessity.
Okay, yeah, because after all, I think like having minutes of a meeting, perhaps for many among us, for example, it would be enough, no?
Correct.
Yeah.
But the challenge is,
Okay.
do you really read the minutes?
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah. And sometimes and oftentimes, no, probably we don't even read the minutes anymore
Yeah.
and just try to remember them. So in
Correct.
other words, like what you did, no, Ernest, really very interesting. How long do you time yourself? Like for example, if there's a meeting, do you make sure that you are done with the graphic storytelling when the meeting is also done, like real time?
Foundationally, if you give me the program, experience will tell you that a particular talk will take X amount of minutes to do. And because in real conferences or meetings, there are breaks. I look forward to breaks because that's where I will add the embellishments or the colors or the graphics, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do companies who require graphic storytelling have certain requirements? Do they ask you to do it this way?
Yeah.
Do they have a particular standard, or do you allow yourself to do your own creativity?
There are companies who would give you their branding guidelines. So-
Branding.
Brand guidelines. So
Okay,
the
brand
logos, the colors, and the fonts sometimes. So if they require that, then in most cases I tend to practice more like how to capture in a way their typography. Yeah.
Yeah, right. You mentioned that also, no? Typography, calligraphy,
Yeah.
and things like this, after all, as you had mentioned, may be big abroad, but not yet as prevalent as how it is here in the Philippines. But usually among your local clients or in the Philippines, Ernest, who are these? You can mention your clients, right? Yeah. Who are those who really would need graphic storytelling?
So locally, the more frequent ones are the UN divisions, the different departments of UN in the Philippines.
United Nations?
Yes.
Oh,
ADB
okay.
does a lot of graphic recording requirements. It gets heavier for local companies during the planning season, which normally falls August, September, October. because they want to capture their strategy planning sessions in a graphic recording way. It's starting to expand, but it's more common with foundations, non-government organizations who are probably exposed also to UN practices.
So in other words, these companies who patronize graphic storytelling would have two ways of doing their minutes. They have the physical copy and this graphic storytelling.
Yes. So normally the minutes, the detailed ones are for them to read through, and the visuals are, especially if your output is a strategy, they rather see it visually. And then companies like, for example, I can mention Nestle. What they did is for their innovation planning for the future products, they displayed it in their boardroom so that it becomes like, okay, where are we on this particular project? For my client, which is Philippine Airlines, what I did was to visualize, because it was virtual meeting with the US market. I captured the notes, sent it to them, and then they actually asked the graphic artist, their internal graphic artist, to translate it into an infographic.
Do they usually share these graphics to what? Maybe clients?
Yeah. So the more confidential ones, they definitely, it's for their own use. But those that are for public consumption, you can see it on my Instagram. Also.
It's a good thing that you mentioned the more confidential ones, no? Do they tell you that, hey, please stop doing the graphics at this point in our meeting?
Yeah, some would even ask you to go out of the room.
Oh, so does that mean that you stop doing
Yeah.
your storytelling?
Or you bring your board or your iPad outside.
Okay. The reason why I asked that is you're not, after all, a regular employee
Correct.
of your clients, right? So in other words, they commission you
Yeah.
to do graphic storytelling, no? Now, in terms of, like, let me see, I'm trying to play the devil's advocate here. Can they get you, for example, as a regular employee so that you don't do, like, commissioning work anymore?
Yeah. I don't think they would, because normally you are on a per need basis. Yeah, and if they hire me, my asking price might be too expensive.
Okay. or it limits you.
It limits you also
It
to
limits you.
expand.
Yeah, right.
But in most cases, the organizations would ask you to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement.
Yes.
And there are clients who would even ask you to delete the files from your own devices
Okay.
and from the shared drives. So
Okay.
there are those
Yeah.
instances.
Okay. So after you have submitted it to them or given it to them, they ask you to, like, delete. Okay.
Yeah.
So
and
there's
show
a,
proof.
yes, confidentiality clause and so on. Now, your demonstration, the actual demonstration of Steve Jobs' speech, no? I think that was a commencement speech,
In
right?
Stanford, yeah.
Yes, at Stanford University. And this is really very popular, very, very popular. I've listened to it. I have read the
The full
script,
transcript,
the
yeah.
full text as well. But of course, my first time not to see it being done, the storytelling being done graphically. Now, listening to you and looking at how you did it, is your concentration on the words that the speaker perhaps is saying, or how do you mix both? Concentrating on what the speaker is saying and then making sure that you execute the storytelling in a graphically attractive, correct way.
So the key hack is to not focus on the graphic. Focus on the thought.
Okay.
So when he mentions a key idea, don't be in love with, oh, I need to draw that woman, because draw it last. Always look for the words, the keywords, and then build on it as a drawing. And that's my process. Others would probably have like a key graphic or key visual, and then they will work around it. But for me, since I'm a note taker first, illustrator last, so I focus more on the words, and then I just add the graphic after.
Does it help, for example, if you have an advanced copy of a speech?
Yes and no. Because the moment that the speaker changes the tone or the emphasis, but you already have a preconceived idea, it's hard. But you will need advanced copies if it's like 8-hour long type of discussions and there are different speakers. So normally, as I mentioned, like clients in Europe, they would brief already, these are the key ideas or outputs that I want you to for the audience to take out. So please focus on those. They already tell you.
Yes, or something like focus on the following keywords, for
Correct.
example. No? Now, you mentioned that one of the things that you also take note of not only are the words or the text, but in the delivery of the person. Does it help also on which words you're going to focus on?
Yeah.
Or no, not words, of course words, no? But which figures or graphics
Correct.
you're going to focus on? Because I saw you I don't know how you did it, but did you skip certain portions of the
Yeah.
speech and so on?
I would skip certain portions if from my understanding, okay, that's another build up to the point I already captured. But it's good, for example, to see the speaker and he would say, for example, the words like pressure and he emphasized it, then you can put like embellishment around the word pressure and put like it is really about pressure as an example, yeah.
Do you find yourself like emphasizing on points that you think should be emphasized but was not emphasized by the speaker at all? Like, for example, a speech like this, not necessarily
Yeah.
in minutes of meetings.
Yeah. So there are times when I try to, okay, this word fits better. Because sometimes the speaker will just probably have a longer way of expressing it when I can just summarize it with a word or two.
So in other words, it's kind
You're also summarizing in a way. Yeah.
you summarize. So in other words, it's kind of subjective. It's your own way of interpreting it. Is that allowed?
Yes and no.
Okay. Yeah.
So
yeah.
So there are clients who would say, okay, this particular speaker is not as eloquent as they want him to be, and then they say, please translate it in a way that's better understood. But policy making meetings, for example, they don't want you to miss out the real words, and that's for me the challenge, because sometimes they would even say, please use this scientific term or whatever.
Right. Especially if there are, for example, scientific terms, no, or some
Yeah.
technical terms. Certainly, they would not want you to change it. no?
Correct.
But you can interpret it.
Yeah, so I research in advance. Sometimes I'm so tempted to just say, please don't get me, just read your book. But
Really?
you know, of course, you can't do that.
Oh, of course.
For me, it helps a lot if you know who the speakers are, what are they known for, what are their works.
Okay.
So what I normally ask as a copy in advance is the profile of the speakers, what are the key topics or key themes, so that I can research on it.
Yeah.
And research is really foundation.
Yes, yes. So in other words, it's not like it's your first time to like know or hear about Steve Jobs. Of
It's
course,
not,
no, definitely not. But it does not happen often also that the individuals who you get in touch with are famous individuals.
Correct.
No? There are individuals who may be just, ordinary persons. So you don't really know them at all. No?
Yeah, so at least my key demands when they hire me is give me the profile of the speakers, the key topics. And if it's not given at a certain date, I tend to say no, because I won't be prepared for it, especially if it's a technical meeting.
So you need to know who they are, at least their background.
Yeah, that's
no?
my personal
Okay.
process.
Is it necessary that you do this because the way you would interpret them or their message or their text graphically would also affect how you may have perceived them as individuals?
Correct. Because if I would know that this person is scientific, very structured, then I will also try to express the graphic recording in a structured way. If I see that this person is in a way flamboyant in the way they speak, I also make it playful. So it has to match the personality of the
Yes,
speakers.
yes. It's like, Ernest, it's like writing a speech also, no? For example, if you're a ghost writer, so to speak, you have to get to know who the person is so that you can pattern the words that you use for him or her, no? Now, what actually spurred you into going into such, Ernest, after graduation, after doing all your day job and everything?
But maybe just to emphasize one point, I have always been a visual learner, and but I like listening to my professors and draw about the topic, just to keep the boredom away. But eventually, I realized that this is something that they need, and I've shared earlier the accidents that happen, right? Where someone saw my notes, and therefore it has become sort of a passion to make everything visual. Even my scheduler, my calendar is in doodles, and I also want to spread that kind of learning type. Not really pinning on people, hey, you should be visual, but at least try, because you will have more ability to retain. And because digital space allows you to do it, how about make an earning out of it also?
Right, right. But this is really the way to go now, no? People are very visual nowadays, no? Now we are not content with simply just reading the text, but we would like to have pictures, illustrations, photos, and others. No, that's why photos are really very, very powerful. No, now practically you have been doing very well in this particular career, Ernest. Would you also advise this type of a career to our students who are taking, of course, information technology, not only information technology, but practically all courses, maybe in communication, maybe in media studies, architecture, fine
Fine arts.
arts, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can do it for your personal notes, but if there are opportunities, and we can link you up with potential clients, why not also transform that into something that gives you an extra opportunity to earn? Not just to earn, no, but really to learn, right? And I would really encourage not just art practitioners, but even those who are in business, all the more in IT, where you have a lot of frameworks to develop. Doing it visually is going to be a very big help.
Yes. In your case, personally, did you have a theories that you need to go into, very structured theories? This is how to do it, and so on.
Aside from the ones I've shown, which actually just kind of validated how I do things before, the reason that I went into certification is because some clients would look for credentials, right?
Right.
But other than that, you don't really need to. There's the internet is a whole resource in itself. Just search graphic recording, sketch notes, visual notes, digital scribing. It's all there, and learn from them. This is where you can steal like an artist, because in any way the frameworks are the same. The structures will always be the same.
Does it help that you are a good illustrator? Does it help that you have a dexterous hand?
I wasn't a good illustrator.
You were not.
It's important that you understand concepts and frameworks more than you're good at drawing. In fact, when you research graphic recording, some of them just use stick figures. If you know how to draw basic shapes, you can kick off a digital scribing
Okay.
career.
Yeah.
But where it helps is on the final processing of a document. If you're into illustration and fine art, by all means use that to really beautify and make it more memorable as a note.
Okay, so all of this you do digitally, no? To wrap up our discussion, Ernest, all of this you do digitally. Unlike, for example, you're doing a painting, for example, you can use charcoal, pen and ink, and so on. So all of these are done digitally.
Now
This
I do it digitally because the clients are requesting.
Okay.
But 2 weeks ago, I just flew to Manila to do a live one, with foam boards. So I also do it with markers and foam boards.
Okay.
But again, uh, my encouragement even to clients is let's not use foam boards so we are eco-friendly and it also saves time because I don't have to redo the work on digital because anyway they want a digital copy
Yes,
after.
okay. So after this, after this, for example, if you have a client, you send it to them.
yeah,
Yes, okay.
for their if they have other notes that
Yeah,
I may have
right.
failed to.
Yes, okay. Did you very quickly? Did you find a client or did you encounter a client who would ask you to like redo an entire graphic storytelling, redo or maybe revise?
More than redo is to add.
Add to it.
Like especially if it's as I mentioned policy making meetings and there are certain policies that they want to really pin down, they would add.
Yes,
That's it.
okay. Yeah. So, yes, Ernest, my goodness, this is truly such an very interesting, no? Very interesting and very engaging conversation that we're having with you just in time for the 15th Digital Expo of Foundation University. But with the few minutes that we have left, I think this would be an opportune time for you, Ernest, to speak to our viewers, speak to our audience as well, and perhaps have a message for them because you are from Negros Oriental and we are truly proud of where you are now and what you have been doing. But please invite them to perhaps pursue what you're doing also.
Yeah, I think the only message is let's try to draw things together. You can follow me, Ernest, on Just Go Hit on Instagram and DM me there. But you can also email me, Ernest at justgohit.art. So we can find ways to collaborate. I'm really keen on transferring this. As I mentioned, the opportunities out there is quite extensive and doing it alone with my day job the time is not just enough.
Right. Yeah. And then a quick last question. Have you ever thought of going into teaching now that you're very good at explaining these things that you are doing? Yes or no?
We are homeschooling parents, so I'll try to teach our kids first before I
Wow,
teach other
really?
kids.
Really? Okay.
I may have the patience to draw ideas, but I tend to be better at one-to-one mentoring in small groups. So let's see. I didn't know this is an interview to be a teacher, but I wasn't expecting that.
Going into, no? Oh, you might consider it as well, right? Yes. Wow, thank you very much, Ernest. As how we would always say it in the Philippines, no? May your tribe increase. You know what that means, of course.
Yes,
And
the
your
tribe
wife is
of
here.
graphic recorders increase in the
Right. Yeah,
Philippines.
may the tribe of graphic recorders increase, not only here in Dumaguete, not only here at Foundation, but perhaps all over the world, no? Or in the
Correct.
Philippines at least, yeah. Thank you once again, Ernest. Thank you very much. And with that, friends, we bring to a close another episode of iGreyhound. This is the official television talk show of Foundation University. We are being streamed live if you are watching us on the main Facebook page of Foundation University and also on Channel 6 of Phil Products TV Dumaguete. So thank you very much once again, Ernest. And with that, friends, we bid everyone a pleasant Thursday evening and we hope to see you again in our future episodes. This has been Cecile Henove bidding everyone a pleasant day.